Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinars, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key of enhancing our performances and for our growth as professionals. With this principle in mind, TechGig has initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give a crisp insight of various domains. Topic for today's webinar session is Designing Experience that Clicks with the Users. We are delighted to have Mr. Kiran Sabnis, Head of User Experience COE at Fiserv India with us today. Mr. Kiran heads the User Experience Center of Excellence at Fiserv India. He has over 16 years of enormous experience in the domain of product design, communication design, software user experience design and consulting. Kiran has worked in a variety of consulting roles as a product designer and UX consultant where he effectively collaborated with small and medium-scale industries as well as global players to deliver end-to-end solutions in product design. Gentlemen, this presentation will continue for next 45 minutes and we'll take your questions after the presentation. In the meanwhile, you can post your queries through the chat pane available in the webinar software. Without further ado, I introduce you to our guest speaker, Mr. Kiran.
Hi, thanks for the quick introduction. Am I audible to everyone?
Yeah, you're audible. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Hello?
Audible, Mr. Sabnis.
Can you hear me?
Hello? Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, can you? Okay, thank you. Thanks for the introduction and thank you very much for providing this opportunity to present my thoughts on user experience and usability. Today for next 45-50 minutes, I'm going to talk on a very interesting topic, which is very near and dear to all of us, which is about user experience. And the title of this webinar is Designing Experience that Clicks with the Users. Moving to the slide number 2. By the way, the slide numbers are at the bottom left corner. So when I move from slide 1 to the next slide, I'm just announcing that. So as far as the user is concerned, the interface. So for example, if you wear the shoes of a user and ask a user, hey, what is ATM? He would show a screen. Or if you ask what is computer, they would talk about it's a screen and a keyboard and a mouse. So wherever the interface of the user is there, they call that as the end product. So user experience is key as far as the product is concerned. Objective of today's session. So let me just recap. Number one is when I went through the list of the participants, I found that there are many UI developers, software developers, business analysts, some team leads are there, product managers, project managers, so on and so forth. Also, I saw some freshers. So I thought like it's a good opportunity for sensitize these tech gig members on what is user experience. Another objective would be help them understand what is user experience, what is usability, because in our industry, lots of terms are used and perhaps those could be confusing. So it's better to help them understand the concept of usability and user experience. The third point, third objective would be to introduce on very high level what is user-centered design methodology, what are the tools and techniques we people use. Provide the direction is going to be the fourth objective, to provide the direction to integrate user-centric thinking in their daily activities. And at the end, what I'm going to do is to expose all the members to various ready-to-use reference material. There is a lot of wealth available on the net, but for the beginners or to sensitize the people, which are the books or periodicals or conferences that are happening in India, or a few websites which you can refer and enhance your knowledge in user experience. So these are the 5 bullet agenda objective of today's session. Moving to this next slide, agenda. This is good, but why should I bother about usability? So this is the question people would have in their mind. So we are going to talk on that. What is user experience? How it is strategic differentiator for any organization? How it interacts with business and technology? Then let's talk about UX development framework. Then user-centered design process, which are the tools, techniques, how that user-centered design process marries with software development lifecycle, the roles and responsibilities of UX team members, then designing for accessibility, the people who are visually challenged or physically handicapped, should do consideration for these people, and what is the future direction in which UX is moving. I know that we are going to cover a lot of things, so it may not be possible to go deeper inside any of the topic. So it's a landscape view of all the topics. Nonetheless, let's keep going, and if you have got any queries, questions, please shoot the questions to me, and at the end of the session I will try to respond most of them. So why should we bother about user experience? A few years ago, if you see on the left hand side, these blue screens, green screens, character-based UI, mainframe-based UI, wherein users were supposed to remember the commands. A lot of training used to be given to them, and it was not very comfortable experience for the users. So users were adapting to the system needs. With the advent of user-centered design philosophy and the process, now systems are designed to meet the user needs and behavior. If you see mobile phones, if you see tablets, if you see new devices coming out, the systems are designed to meet the expectations, the changing needs of the users. So it's a paradigm shift. We can't be designing the same old things because the trend is changing. Moving to the next slide, debunking user experience. So before we kind of define what is the ISO definition of a usability, let's see some of the examples. As far as the presentation is concerned, I tried making this presentation to be more of a visual form, so it won't be boring for you. So this is the first example, So a typical electrical switchboard in our homes. So at a glance, this is a pretty good layout of these buttons. There are some rotary knobs and the sockets are there. So you'll feel this is a great UI, but the moment you want to switch off the tube light, I'm sure most of us will switch off all the 4 buttons. So it's not at all intuitive. It's not communicative for any of the users. Moving to the next slide, this is one of my favorite examples. So this was conceptualized by one of the usability gurus, Don Norman. In 1984, he came up with a book called Design of Everyday Things, and this was the poster, or this was the front, or this was the cover image of his book. So again, it looks pretty good. It's a sexy UI, good colors, good graphics, or very balanced shape. But the moment you want to pour the tea, I'm sure your fingers will get burnt. So good-looking things may not be usable. Hey, this is another example. Imagine that you are driving a car on a national highway or an express highway. You are already busy in managing the speed. You are busy in looking at the traffic, so on and so forth, and you want to open for a particular reason a rear window glass. So these buttons, those are very soft. Just touch it, feel it, but again, it's very difficult for you to manage because the graphics on it is not at all communicative. I'm sure any user will get completely confused with this. Error messages. There is a site, I don't remember the name, but funnierrormessages.com or something like that. So errors, every user, you and me, will definitely come up with error at any of the times. So errors need to be defined appropriately, otherwise users would get completely confused. For example, the top one, it's a success, the operation completed successfully, but it's an error message. Why? Some error has happened, okay, but you should tell me as a system, I expected from a user that how do I recover from this error, or some technical error messages which I can't understand at all as a user. Moving to the next example. This is a typical his restroom or washroom at the airport. I know that while designing this kind of washrooms, the most important aspect that anybody considers is kind of a space, how to appropriately use the space so more and more passengers can use it. But such kind of arrangement, you're eating the space but nothing comes out and no passengers can use this. This is another example. So this is a CRM or application which would be used by enterprise-wide users, but it's so confusing. There are about 40. I counted those, 40 plus checkboxes, 14 buttons, 10 entry fields, and on top of that, she's supposed to use this for about 8 hours, 9 hours, so on and so forth. So can you imagine the kind of cognitive load that would be coming on such kind of a user? So only making this left aligned, right aligned, so on and so forth, putting the buttons at the bottom is not going to enhance the user experience. In nutshell, user experience is not making the product look sexy or beautiful, by making some cosmetic changes. No. But to make them easy to use, intuitive, error-free, and the overall experience should be delightful. This is user experience. Let's move on. User experience is a strategic differentiator. User experience cannot be a standalone activity. So one has to balance the business needs and technology demands. So user experience, business, and technology go hand in hand. So one needs to understand the users, technology challenges, and business drivers. Then only the user experience of an overall system or application can be meaningful. Moving to the next slide, which is slide number 17. Here is the published data. I won't go in details of that. This presentation would be available to all of us. But couple of key things. In the recent Gartner survey, it says that 40% of the global 2,000 enterprises will have to focus on user experience by 2013. So it's going to be a key driver for some enterprises which are top 2,000 enterprises. Our user experience is going to be wise to have feature, not nice to have. Earlier it was kind of yeah, it's good, can you make this screen good in couple of hours, or can you just design that icon, or can you just paint the screen in blue and green, something like that. But people have started understanding about the business relevance of user experience, and this is getting published in data. There are lots of case studies which you can go at your leisure, how user experience has transformed the businesses. Moving to the next slide, what is user experience? As I started, there are various terminologies used for usability, user experience. For today's context, we are going to talk about usability and user experience. There is subtle change which I will talk in next few slides. If you see man-machine interface, ergonomics, human factors, human-computer interaction, so on and so forth. But the four terms, man-machine interface, ergonomics, human factors, to me are kind of pre-computer era, we can say. The human factors is a term even used today in appropriate fashion. It is getting replaced by usability or user experience. But these got started, human factors was invented by, the term was coined by Les Porter and Paul Fitts during, these were the very famous psychologists, and they coined this term in 1945. But these are the terms being used now also. In Pfizer, we use the term user experience. We'll go in details about that. But some people still use human factors, human factor engineering, so on and so forth. The only commonality which is very important to note over here is all these terms are centered about users, and that's the focus point. Moving to the next slide. So I suppose we all are on slide number 19, a quick check. Okay. So UX is a multidisciplinary approach. So it encompasses various schools of thoughts, for example, psychology or cognition, sociology, how in a society users are behaving, what are the social aspects, design, it talks about product design, visual design, communication design, linguistics, philosophy and language, how those are marrying. Technology we must understand, branding, corporate branding or visual strategy, ethnography, that's the cultural studies, or human factors we talked about. So it's like a usability expert would know most or should know many of these facets of this knowledge. So it's not only a psychology or only design, or a good designer cannot be a good user experience unless he understands psychology, unless she understands branding, she has got flair about technology, so on and so forth. So it is a multidisciplinary way of looking at a product. Moving to the next slide, which is slide number 20. Again, these are loosely coupled. One can object on these definitions also, but for the sake of understanding, I am trying to make the things clear. User is always at the center. Human factors focuses more on capabilities, limitations of the users, which is the next circle. Basically focusing on hardware, product. Usability is more about accomplishing the user goals, more of ease of use. We use in computer software context, and user experience is the overarching term, so it's more about making the overall experience delightful, used in the context of software as well as service design. It does not mean that human factors is limited and usability is wider, no. But these are the terms, for the sake of simplicity, we have tried to define. Moving to the next slide, which is slide number 21. Again, I'm trying to put the perspectives of all the three things, like human factors, usability, and user experience. Imagine you are designing interior of a car, a dashboard, a wheel, and some mechanism, seating arrangement. The human factors perspective is again understand the limitation capability of the users, understand the anthropometry data, understand whether the posture is creating fatigue to the users, driver seat is providing appropriate support to your lumbar. So again, it is more on ergonomics part. Moving to the next slide, usability perspective is focusing on user goals, ease of use, learnability. We'll understand these terms more in details as we move further. But a few questions usability guy would ask is whether the control knobs are intuitive and easy to remember, whether the steering is providing appropriate and comfortable grip, whether the speedometer is visually clear. Can a driver look at the speedometer, the speed, even in the night if she is driving, can she look at the speedometer, can she see at what speed the car is going? or the gear sequence is consistent with other cars, so on and so forth. So consistency, ease of use, quick learning are the focus points from usability perspective. If you move to the user experience, which is again a wider thing, focus is on multi-sensory user experience, experiential aspects. So car is good, the steering wheel is appropriate, the gears are in the sequence of similar cars, the cushions are good, but user experience talks much above that. Whether the upholstery is great, the seats are having reclining controls, whether there is a humidity and temperature control, auto controls are there. There is a very pleasant music which is provided, the ambience is cozy, the cushions are soft, steering adjustment is there. I'm not talking about features. I'm talking about the experiential from anthropometry, body limitations of a human being, capabilities of the human being, then moving to usability aspects of learnability, memorability. I'm coming to the experiential aspects. So user experience is much wider, broader, and deeper. Moving to the next slide. I'm again
sorry for
to the slide
interrupting.
number, which is 24 at the bottom left.
Hello.
Please.
Sorry for interrupting. Your
Yeah.
voice is breaking a lot in between. I mean, we are getting feedback from participants as well. Can you please
Is
check
it?
your audio?
Now is it better?
Yeah, the voice is
Is it
good
better
enough,
now?
but it breaks in between. And for 1 minute it's good, but after that it breaks.
So let me just check again. Just give me feedback if you still get this kind of problem.
This is better now. We can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So definition of usability, we covered many things, but for the sake of definition, I think ISO 9241 defines usability for everybody's understanding as the extent to which the product can be used by specified users to achieve the specified goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. So this definition is very important here because the specified users with specified goals is very important in the specified context. So we are talking about these terms more in details. If we move on slide number 25, the parameters of usability, how usability can be measured. Ease of learning, how quickly a user can learn how to use the system. Efficiency of use is how fast a user can accomplish the tasks. Or memorability, can a user remember how to use the system or application. Error frequency and severity, like how often user makes errors while using the system, or how quickly user can recover from these errors. And satisfaction, subject to satisfaction, is how much user likes the system to use. And user experience, as I was talking about, is overarching term, so this is a system should be usable, it should be easy to use, at the same time it should be desirable, it's called as a triangle of user experience. Three corners represent usability, user experience, and usability, usefulness, and desirability. Moving to the next slide. Once we understand what is the concept of usability, we saw various examples in day-to-day life. Now we are going to going further on what is the UX development framework. If we want to design a system or an application, what is the framework that we follow? Here the person called Jesse James Garrett from Adaptive Path has come up with a framework which is called as 5S or 5-layer framework. So if we peel away user experience, it comprises of 5 planes or 5 layers, and these layers are from bottom to top. So typically typically any UX consultant would start from strategy, then she will go to scope. Based on scope, she will decide what is the structure, what is the skeleton, and what is the surface. So from abstract to concrete is the journey. We'll see each plane one by one. So if you say if an assignment comes to you, or if we get engaged into any of the assignments of developing a particular product, for example, if we want to develop say a portal which buys and sells books, okay, so if this is a brief, typically UI guys are typically people who are just painting the screens, they will start on surface layer. But as a UX philosophy, we start from a strategy layer. So I'm explaining each plane as we move further. Strategy plane talks about what are the user goals, what are the business goals, with whom we are competing. So it's more of a deciding strategy wherein we get to know about the business goal, business direction in which we are moving. As we move up, scope plane, we kind of decide what are the features, what functions we need to cover, what are the services, what facilities need to be provided, so on and so forth. So for example, in that portal for selling and buying books, whether should we provide shopping cart, book review should be there, cross-reference of the books should be provided, so on and so forth. As we move on a structure plane, so what is the categories we need to chunk this information, the conceptual model we need to define, hierarchy we need to decide, so on and so forth. Skeleton plane, then it comes about interface elements, widgets, how the navigation should be there, how the customer journeys from screen A to screen B has to be defined. And surface plane is typically people understand usability is about surface, about the colors, font, images, links, look and feel. But below surface there are so many layers we need to go deeper to come up with a real user experience. So these 5 layers of user experience are important as a development framework for every user experience consultant. Moving to the next slide, and this is the heart of today's presentation, is user-centered design process, called as UCD. And this user-centered process cannot run in isolation. You know, it's got software development process. So software development process and user-centered design process go hand in hand, and then user-centered software development process is defined. This is what we are talking about, user-centered design. But for the sake of simplicity and today's presentation, since we are talking about the landscape view, I coined this as understand, create, and deliver. So it's a user-centered process. User is at the core of it at every stage of this user-centered development life cycle. We are going to validate this application with the users. But for the sake of simplicity, we call U as a understand phase, C as a create phase, and D as a deliver phase. So what is going to come under U, what is going to come under C, and what is going to come under D? Let's go step by step. Understand. So we have to understand who are the users, their types, their needs and goals, the context of use, what is the competition, so on and so forth. Let's focus more on U, that is understand. In understand phase, what we do is we try to understand who are the users, what is the age, sex of the users, educational background, professional background, from what culture those users are going to come, attitude towards the technology, the habits and behavioral aspects of the users. For example, I am designing application for a customer support advisor. the educational background of the customer support advisor would be definitely different than if I want to design an application for medical officer. So I would go deeper inside on understanding the needs, the behavioral aspects of medical officer. Also, I will understand whether the medical officer is novice user or intermediate or he or she is expert. So we need to understand the users in depth in this phase. Going forward, we need to understand what are the user needs, what are the actual needs, what are the latent needs. People at times don't talk, so we need to observe in their daily context, how they use the systems. Are there any pain points? Are there any barriers? Also, we need to understand, are there any special needs? So we need to understand their needs, their goals, and various aspects of the users. Moving to the next slide, understand the context of use. So as I mentioned, if I'm developing an application for a doctor in a hospital who is working in a hospital, vis-a-vis I am developing an application for a production engineer or maintenance engineer who is working on a shop floor, the context is completely different. If I am developing an application for a desktop, or if I am designing an application for a tablet or a mobile, so the context is again different. So in one way, desktop, the person is sitting in her office and doing it at her leisure, or there is no disturbance from external world. But for mobile, the user would be on the run, on the move, and she would be in a hurry. So we need to understand the context while developing an application from usability perspective. Also, we need to understand the usability goals. For example, if I am designing an application for travel agent, so travel agent efficiency and error freeness are very important aspects. Quickly I need to complete the form, send that form without making errors. It's not that I'm traveling, I'm flying to some other country on 2nd of February and she puts a different date. It would be complete chaos. So error freeness and efficiency are the key aspects, our key usability goals. And for a call center, quick resolution of the query. So quick, fast are efficient way of doing it are the usability goals. So it depends on the users, the context of use, the usability goals would vary. So who from the usability team would do this? There is a role defined as user researcher. So user researcher, I'm moving on to slide number 43, is a person who observes and interviews the users. He or she would go into the natural environment of the users to understand how the users work, how they live, how they play, so on and so forth. Also, the user researchers understand the users' goals, tasks, expectations, so on and so forth. And they come back and give their feedback, the usability team. The tools and techniques they use, I'm on slide number 14. There are various techniques these people use. For example, contextual inquiry. So it's a technique by which user researcher or usability team members, they go into the natural environment of the users. If you are designing an application for auto rickshaw driver, I'm just thinking aloud. So you can't be sitting in an office and developing an application. You need to sit next to the auto rickshaw driver and see how he uses the mobile phone or how she uses some kind of application which would be developed. So we need to go in the context of the users. Then another technique is focus group sessions. So it's a participatory discussions wherein you call various members, various users, give them some scenario, ask them how they would react on this, do some whiteboarding, so on and so forth. User interviews is a kind of a structured or semi-structured, I would say, question answer session. It's not actually question answer session but more of a discussion. But user interviews also is one of the ways by which we can capture the user requirements. surveys wherein we can use some free tools or some appropriate tools and launch the survey and get the feedback. It's typically useful if we want quantitative results are required. Ethnographic studies is again, we'll touch upon this, but it's more of a cultural aspects we need to understand. Suppose if we need to develop some application for China, so we need to understand their culture, their festivals, their needs, or the social relevance, so on and so forth. Again, we can go deeper inside each and every technique, because this technique or every technique itself can be a topic of discussion. But we are covering this in this session on very high level. So once we complete this understanding phase using appropriate techniques, using appropriate tools by user researchers, we go into the phase called create phase, wherein we create the solutions, we do task analysis, we develop quick wireframes, validate with the users, do visual design, do testing. We'll discuss this in details. I suppose I'm audible and the voice is not breaking. Unfortunately, I can't get any feedback through this WebEx. I'm just talking blindly because it's not two-way communication, but silence is consent. So I think you guys are hearing me properly and I'm audible. So moving to the next slide, which is slide number 46. So in create phase or create solutions, usability team conducts task analysis. The goals are broken down into various tasks. So they study the task, they prioritize the task and come up with a task analysis. The information architects come up with, they define the information structure, the hierarchy of the information, how information needs to be segregated, so on and so forth, and come up with the quick prototypes. The prototypes could be made using paper sketches or low fidelity, which is a very kind of details are not much, very high level sketches are there. Fidelity is level of details, so it's not having a lot of details. Just quick sketches one can do, show to the stakeholders. And also, if the stakeholders and users are in sync, they can move ahead with clickable prototypes. As I mentioned during the call that during the session that as we come up with some sketchy ideas, it's appropriate that we go back to the users. If users are not available, showcase this to the stakeholders and have some whiteboarding sessions, show them these early prototypes, get the feedback, and appropriately change. In user experience design, two things are very important. One is validate with the users, and second, iterative design. So it's always changing. Let's not attempt to make it best in the first shot. So it's an iterative process. Once we validate with the stakeholders our early prototypes, we can involve visual designers. Again, it's not a linear process, but for the sake of simplicity, I am explaining in a fashion. Visual design can always get engaged with usability guys also. So visual designers understand the brand strategy. They come up with, or they refer to the brand guidelines. They develop the visual strategy and come up with the mock-ups, what they call as the visual themes, and those are showcased to the stakeholders. It talks about the color, the fonts, the layout, the visual themes, so on and so forth. For these create things, there are 4 roles, and again these are not independent roles. Information architect and interaction designer can overlap. Usability consultant is a specialized skill, but again in Indian context, many roles overlap. Even in US context now, these hybrid designers or hybrid usability professionals are coming. They do many things together, so they are having multi-skilled people. But for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of understanding of this domain, we are trying to categorize this in 4 different roles: information architect, interaction designer, usability consultant, and visual designer. So information architect is a person, he is a typical usability or user experience architect. What he does is she organizes the structure, come up with the design, develops a layout, defines the navigational structure, and the tools what they use. There are many techniques that they use, but card sorting is one of the powerful techniques what we use in context of Fiserv is we involve users, and these cards are provided with the names, functions, and design attributes, and we involve users and ask them to categorize the cards, to organize the cards, and it helps understand the mental models of the users, you know, whether the menu structure, what user thinks, are we providing that, so on and so forth. So the card sorting, chunking are appropriate techniques that information architects use. Interaction designer, once the high-level information architecture is defined, interaction designers come into play. They conceptualize the interaction models using paper sketches. They propose the solutions, and these are the guys who convert this textual information into graphical information. And moving to the next slide, they use various techniques which I touched upon about paper prototypes. You can see some samples of the paper prototypes, which are very sketchy things which we scan and share with the stakeholders. If we are developing some application on iPhone, we can even create some paper prototypes, paste on the screen of a mobile, and give it to some of the users. You know, this is how the application is going to look. This is how the application is going to behave. For low fidelity prototypes, we use different tools like starting from PowerPoint, Visio, going towards Axure or Just in Mind. So different tools can be used appropriately based on what level of details of the wireframe your stakeholders expect. And going forward, you can even create the clickable prototypes. Usability consultant is a guy who defines the usability strategy, gets involved into usability testing. You know, so whenever we are conducting usability testing, the usability consultant gets involved, and he or she would be a facilitator while conducting the tests. So usability lab testing, this is a technique usability consultant would use. So there are a number of ways by which we test the application, or we test the product which is going to be launched. But here is one example, and in Fiserv, in US we have got this usability lab. So this usability lab is typically, we invite the participants. If you see on the right hand side, the arrow shows participants. So it's a two room, or you can say a hall has been split into 2 rooms, and with a compartment of one-sided mirror. So users can't see the usability team, but UX team members can see the facilitator and a participant. So participant is typically given a task, and she completes the task, and by recording, so video cameras are put, and they record the facial expressions as well as keystroke or keyboard movement, you know, and the mouse movement is being captured using appropriate tools. So users are invited in such labs. It is a costly affair, but at appropriate time, whenever there is funding, these members are invited in a lab, and the team tests the usability of the application with the actual end users. There is another cost-effective way of doing remote usability testing, which we use from India, because we are not located in US, but all the users are in US. So So what we do is we use tools like Moray for doing remote usability testing, wherein uh, participants meet online and they share the desktop. It's as I mentioned, it's a very cost-effective way of doing it. The benefit of this is if users are in Australia, Europe, and US, you can test the user sitting in India, and also large number of participants can be tested because it's number one cost-effective, and many users can be tested simultaneously. Then visual designer, this is pretty simple because simple, what I mean is not from the skill perspective but for understanding perspective, because the nomenclature itself talks about it. Visual designers are the very creative guys. They define what should be the visual representation of the screen or interface layer. They use the visual language, they understand the brand guidelines, they understand the corporate identity, and they come up with a visual design of interface. So we completed the understanding phase, then we completed create phase, and very important phase is delivery. So understand, create, and deliver. Deliver is the last stage of this user-centered design process. So it's delivering the front end or UI code based on the technology, based on the platform. User experience team delivers either HTML, CSS, or Silverlight, or Flex, or Dojo, whatever technology development team is using. We provide the front end code. At the same time, UX guidelines, best practices, user interface design specification documents, usability test reports are the end deliverables from UX team. For UI development or UI delivery, so UI developer is a key component of this chain. Only thing is, many times they get engaged pretty late in the life cycle, but they are the guys who create the tangible thing. So from concept to creation, these guys get engaged into creation phase. So they create the experientiable prototype, they create the front-end code, and they sit with the development team to make sure that their output becomes useful to the development team. So they develop the front-end code and make sure that it integrates appropriately with the backend. At the same time, if there are any changes required, these are the guys who help them. This is a typical life cycle we use. This is how it marries with software development team. This cycle that we use at Pfizer, I'm not going into details because it has covered most of the things. It would be repetition for you. So here are the various tools and techniques. As a UX practitioners, we use lots of techniques and tools, and we use this tool depending on various at appropriate time of the UCD life cycle. So if you see, for example, diary studies is fourth from the left, third from the left. So typically users, we can give to some diaries which are like bound books, to notebooks to the users, and ask them to jot down their readings, their experiences, and we can collect the diaries after appropriate time and study and come up with the analysis. There is something called as eye gaze tracking or eye tracking. So wherein supposing if I go to a site of timesofindia.com, where I look at first, so how your gaze of eye, so where you are looking, it tracks, and depending on that you can come to know that the location of the photograph or the typography or the importance given to various aspects on the screen is correct or not. So there are, as I said, there are lots of techniques. At the end I'm going to give you the laundry list of techniques and the research material. You can go through that. Design for accessibility, and we are on slide number 63. This is a very important aspect called as accessibility or design for accessibility. So we need to understand that all users are not in the having in quote unquote normal needs. They are having some special needs, and product accessibility or software accessibility means even the people who are having this challenge or disabilities can perform, understand, navigate, and interact with the product. So there are n number of disabilities, right from hearing disability, cognitive disability, or visually impaired, people not having limbs, physically handicapped. How you can design an application for a blind people or visually impaired people? So we need to understand the accessibility needs of the users. On the right hand side, if you see that this is a typical chart they used for testing the color blindness. So if you see the 3 that is mentioned on the left hand side, normal people would look at this 3, but the people who are having color blindness will just see brown and gray. Even if you see this traffic signal, red, yellow and green, or red, orange and green, so they see only brown, brown, brown. So this is very critical, so even, for example, even if we want to design an application, software application, we can't use green, red at leisure. We need to understand that, hey, there are 15%, and the data shows that about 15% of the male population in US are colorblind for green and red, which is significant. So while designing the dashboard, while designing the colors, or while designing interfaces, we need to understand that there are some special needs, and we need to consider. Companies like iPhone, Apple, and products like iPhone, they are considering these applications, or even the base product has got designed for visually challenged people. So if you're accessible, it can read the text for you, it can read the messages for you, the fonts can be made bigger, so on and so forth. So accessibility is a legal requirement. It's not only CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's not a social work. But in US, if you see this Section 508, or in UK, DDA, what they call Disability Discrimination Act, any public-facing website should consider this, that it should be accessible by physically or visually impaired people. You can go to the link which I have put over here, http://w3.org.WA. You can find more information about how to make the application accessible for all kinds of disabilities. Moving to the next slide, future direction of the user experience. So multi-sensory user experience is a future direction, wherein human senses, technologies, business processes are getting seamlessly synchronized to meet the changing needs of the users. So till today we have seen, or till yesterday I would say, we have seen that users were interacting with the software or application or a product using mouse and keyboard, but that physical barrier has gone, and the digital world is getting closer to the physical world. So if you see this, as I mentioned, multi-sensory, there is a speech recognition. So the device can recognize your speech. They can capture your sight. You can talk with the device using your eyelids. Or voice recognition, like Siri, so it can recognize Siri for iPhone 4S, like that intelligent personal assistant. So she can recognize your voice, she can respond to you, so voice interaction is already there. Gesture analysis, so like we are going to see a couple of examples of Kinect as well as Google Motion. So natural user interface or gesture analysis, there are something like olfactory cognition, so this smell is going to get detected, and such kind of applications are being designed for US security. So at the point of entry, your smell would be recognized and is without perfume. So and appropriately they can come up with the data points. So multi-sensory user experience is going to be the key. of the future. So if you see the example like Kinect, so you don't need to touch the game, but you can play as if you are naturally playing this game. So with spoken commands and gestures, you can play the game. So it's a natural user interface. Google Motion, again, it's a built-in webcam is there, or special tracking technology has been provided by which you can make the appropriate movements, and those are not very difficult. You can learn quickly, and the data says that the productivity of sending email can be 12% faster. Okay, it might look funny to begin with, but once you get habituated, your efforts would be reduced a lot, and physical activity also would be increased. So here you don't need to touch the mouse, the keyboard. You behave in your natural fashion, and it would be captured, and you can start interacting with the user using your senses. Multi-touch screens. As you see this Surface, there are various devices. In banking and finance domain, people are thinking of having Surface to be available at the branches. So people can come, just put their credit card, look at the balance they can transfer from account A to account B, so on and so forth. So the physical devices can be kept on the Surface, and you can do the natural transactions. You can use your touch to do the transactions. Pervasive computing, I'm sure most of you have seen this 6th Sense video, so you don't need to depend on a screen, on a flat surface. Anywhere you can project. It's called ubiquitous computing. You can use it anywhere, anytime. So it's pervasive computing. There are millions of applications available on iPhone. So some of the applications like SoundHound or Shazam. So it recognizes your music. It recognizes your humming. If you want to know which song it is, so you can just hum it, and it can throw you back with the data, who was the composer, who was the music director, so on and so forth, and you can buy that. So even your audio is getting captured, and it throws you the data, and you can do online buying. Another application is Looped. So why we are talking about this kind of diverse things is how the senses or sensory feelings of the user are getting connected. How physical world is coming closer to the digital world. I'm trying to explain this. So Looped is another application wherein if you go to watch a soccer match or a cricket match, and you will come to know that, hey, there are 10 friends who also have come to watch this cricket match. So you can just connect with them, and you can decide that which coffee shop we should go, where we should go for lunch. So it recognizes called a geofencing. It will capture the data of your friends and push that to your device. So there are so many people are doing a lot of research on new technologies, new devices. There are flexible screens, ubiquitous computing, or devices as a jewelry, or if you see at the center wherein is a braille cell phone, so the people who are not having or the people who are visually impaired, the braille mobile phone would be there, so on and so forth. So the thing is, the future of user experience is multi-sensory and the seamless integration of that multiple senses. So in nutshell, I'm just recapping the thing, like if we want to create wow experience, or if you want to design applications which will give wow experience, we need to understand that focus on users, understand their goals and context of use, number one. Number two is construct a 5-layer UX development framework. Don't start with UI. So we should start with strategy, scope, structure, skeleton, and surface, bottom-up approach. apply UCD, user-centered design process. So understand the users, create the solutions, and deliver the UI code with user specification document. Learn appropriate UX tools and techniques, and keep track of future directions in which UX is moving. If we do this, designing experience that clicks with the users is possible. As I mentioned during the introduction, is a lot of material is available on web. Many places is structured also, but I thought I can pick up something which could be useful for the audience. These are some of the reference material. I'm sure this WebEx would be available for a few days. You can revisit that, or you can write to me. But there are UX organizations which provide a lot of information about what is happening in the world of human-computer interaction, what is happening in the world of ergonomics, interaction design, so on and so forth. So couple of couple of links you definitely can visit is usability.gov and your professional association, wherein you can visit and find a lot of material which is available. There are online publications. I have kept kind of a private publications and private blogs aside, but these are some of the blogs and publications widely used: Boxes and Arrows, UX Matters, Usability News. You can go through them. Some books which are basics, which talks about basics of usability and user experience, like I mentioned about Don Norman's The Design of Everyday Things, or Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think, which is a light reading. Even in the flight, you can go through that, understand the basic concepts, and go deeper inside. Usability Engineering is another book by Jacob Nelson about face. There is another book by Deborah Mayhew about usability engineering lifecycle, so on and so forth. So you can go through that. There is interesting information. Worldwide Usability Day is celebrated on second Thursday of every November. There are lots of events those happening. You can participate in any of the events. Those are globally published. This year is on 8th November. You can be part of World Usability Day. In Pfizer, we celebrate this World Usability Day. Last year, we celebrated in big way. So you can always approach us, so on and so forth. There are lots of conferences happening on user experience. One of the conferences that's going to happen this year is India HCI 2012. So it is going to be there in Pune in the third week of April. So you can be part of that, learn more about what is happening latest in the world of usability, user experience, and human computers. There are various design schools wherein there are post-graduation program or some short-term programs are there. Industrial Design Center, IIT Bombay has got a 2 years course. National Institute of Design, NID, has got 2 or 3, I don't remember, 2.5 years of course in software user experience. IIT Guwahati has got BTech with specialization in software usability. Symbiosis, MIT. So many schools, this being upcoming field, many schools, design schools. And in addition to that, some courses happen periodically from these schools about usability and user experience. So I think I have taken more than 1 hour, sorry for that, but this is about what I wanted to cover today. I thank you very much for giving this opportunity to talk on this very interesting topic. Feel free to get in touch with me. My email ID is there. And if you have got any questions, please shoot those questions. I'll try to answer. Thank you.
I mean, questions are shared with you. Can you see them in the questions pane? Hello?
Okay. Is there a part-time training program on UX design in India? There are various training programs. Those are happening in India on UX. You can visit to the websites of Industrial Design Center, IIT Bombay or NID. Even HFI, Human Factors International, conducts some courses. You can very well avail those courses. You need to keep track, but I don't think there are standard dates or standard months in which these kind of programs are conducted. But if you keep watch on them, you can avail. Another thing is there are online courses. I'm not pretty sure, but one of the universities in UK or a couple of universities in US are providing such kind of courses. I don't know about the fee structure, but there are e-learning courses on this. Which is better, left navigation panel or right navigation panel? The typical answer from any UX person is it depends. It depends on the context. There is no right or wrong answer to the whether the navigation panel should be at the right. But if you can mention more details about the whole structure, the application, and I'm sure the best person is not Kiran Sabnis, but the best person would be user. So if you are designing this, go to the users. You yourself can find the answers. What techniques do you know or use to create user-friendly GUI? I think we talked about this. User-friendly GUI. Okay, if you want to enhance the user experience, the tools and techniques at appropriate stages of UCD you can use. Can you tell some simple methods and ways of improving user experience for visually impaired people for a web application? Okay, so ways to improve user experience of visually impaired people. So simple methods. I don't understand the question, but simple method is to get in touch with visually impaired people. Nonetheless, you can visit the site I mentioned. You can get lots of tools available over there. You can test with them. For a web application, is it better to present a user with the option to have serious delete or to use trash system? Again, I think it depends. The only guideline what I can give is to provide the appropriate nomenclature for the button so he or she can understand. Because these questions, to be very honest, are difficult to answer just in one line, because you can't understand, you can't give solution unless you understand the complete context. Thanks, Kiran is right. Okay. Start some courses. Is there any update on that? Design when I was planning. I don't know about this, Alaknanda, whether some institute was planning to start some course and whether have they started this, but you can very well visit to their site and get more information about it. So I think most of the questions about are about where can they find training, where can they find courses. Some key questions they ask, but my answer is about it depends, and it depends on the context. It depends on the situation in which you are, and the best way to do is try to find the users, try to follow the user-centered process, construct your UX development framework, iterate, and test with the users. I think these were the questions to me. I tried answering. Nonetheless,
There are a
please
few more
feel free to
questions.
get back to me if you want. Yeah, those are not appearing over here. I understand.
I've
Okay, okay.
shared a couple of
I
more questions.
understand increasing usability adds both to the cost and time. Is there any benchmark ROI or case study for increased usability? Uh, One second. I'm unable to see the broader picture, so that's why yeah, just a moment.
Can you expand that question span?
Let me see if the pop-up blocker is the issue. I understand increasing. One second. Sorry for this because I can see these questions in such a small window. I'm unable to read them. I understand increasing usability adds to both cost and time. I partially agree with this, but if we use appropriate tools and techniques, for example, paper prototype is a very, very cost-effective way of doing it. And how do you measure cost? Because I think if you can turn it around quickly, if you can accomplish, one second, yeah, you want to? Yeah, but it's not getting expanded. Sorry team, one second. One second. Anyway, so the thing is, if we use appropriate tools and techniques, I don't think it would be a costly affair, because if we don't test with the users, or if we don't appropriately use the usability methods, then the cost of fixing those bugs would be much higher. As far as no, I apologize because I'm trying to find the way of expanding this. Wow, good. Thank you so much. Okay. Increasing usability at cost and time. Is there any benchmark on ROI case study? Yeah, there are various case studies. Rashid, I apologize for that. I could not go through your question in the first stage, but now I could see your thing. So benchmarked ROI, there are so many case studies available how ROI of the usability inputs can be measured. There are various case studies, but it's a wrong notion, I think, that usability would add to the cost and time. If it does appropriately, then one should not believe this, because we have been practicing usability for last so many years, and the benefits are enormous as compared to the time we invest in this. What are the flexi fields? Pramod Gajre, I don't know about this. What is the kind of methodology we shall use when it comes to game designing, make the player engage? Yeah, game designing is another very interesting field wherein fun factor is very important over there, and increasing the challenges of the user every time is completely a different game. And game over here is it's a different ball game, I would say, to engage the users And methodology, I don't think, because we have done lots of work in the game design, but I don't think different methodology is required, but the parameters and the heuristics are different for game design. For usability, you have to learn the techniques how to do using WCAG 2. Please go through it. Okay, it's not a question. HFI is offering the course, but course fees are higher side. Is it worth to do a course 80K 10 days for a designer which has a complete practical knowledge? I don't think I should comment on this, but what I heard about HFI course is pretty good. There are other courses also, you can go through that, but on cost I can't comment. Thanks, Mr. Sabnis. It was a wonderful session. How CUA certification helps a web designer, and how could he convince company to fund the course? Unfortunately, I can't say this, but what I think is you can create a business case to your company saying that if you invest now, Mr. Abdul Kalim is just working as a web designer, and I'm just taking your name, but he or she is providing UI inputs. But if a person does a thorough course, say CUA or any user experience course, it would be possible so that the person would add a lot of business value, and this 5S model would be really useful. You can make use of this model and try to convince the management that yes, if I do this, the value that I would be adding would be enormous than what I used to add. I think this was the last question. I don't think I haven't skipped any of them. So thank you very much for being patient, and thanks TechGig for providing me this opportunity, and I would look forward to have more communication with you. If any of the guys want to have communication, please feel free to write a mail to me, and we can discuss more in details. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mr. Kiran, for your informative session on designing experience that clicks with the users. It was indeed an enlightening session. I would also like to thank our participants for their support in making this webinar a huge success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Gentlemen, the next session in Cloud Computing webinar series is happening this Thursday, that is February 2nd at 3 p.m. Topic for the webinar is Cloud Implementation Scenarios for Enterprise. We'll be having Mr. Shankar Verma, Practice Manager at Yash Technologies, as our guest speaker. So see you all on Thursday at 3 p.m. Till then, have a nice day. Thank you.